Okay, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you guys are at. My name is Heather Cole. I am a strategic coach, public speaker, and president of Lodestar Solutions. And today we're going to talk about IT is from Mars, business is from Venus, and change starts with me. This is about the interpersonal relationships between IT and the business. In particular, I'll focus on finance because that's where we see a lot of challenges today. And a good example of this is a number of years ago, I had a client come to me after going to an IBM Cognos event and seeing all these great dashboards saying, I want that. This is the CFO of a major organization. And he says, Heather, I want those dashboards. They're so great. I said, great. Well, let's talk to your CIO and let's make this happen. And of course, I'm all excited, right? And we go and I sit down with the CIO and I explain to him what the CFO wants. And I said, hey, he wants dashboards, he wants to be able to click and drill. And I said, will you support this initiative if he funds it? And the CIO looks at me and says, no. I was shocked, needless to say. I thought he'd want the latest new toys. And when I asked him why, he said, we won't be successful. Our data is not in a state that we can do this. And I said, well, that makes total sense. What do you need to get the data fixed? He goes, I've been requesting funding for 5 years for a data warehouse. And every time I ask for it in my budget, I get turned down. They say no. And I said, well, is that Mike, the CFO, turning it down? And he says, yes. And I said, okay, if I can solve that problem for you and help you get funding for your data warehouse, will you support this project? He goes, I'd love those great new toys. So I call a meeting between the CFO and the CIO, and we sit down. And of course, I prep the CIO on what to say and what to have ready. And I said, I need you to have the numbers of how much it would cost for your data warehouse, how much time it would take, and be able to support that. Sure enough, we sit down, and within about 45 minutes, we walk through, I do a little demo. I said, this is what the CFO wants. And I turned to the CIO and I said, can this happen? Would you support this? And he says, no, because it wouldn't, you drill down and the numbers would be bad. I'd be giving you misinformation. And for those of you that don't understand the world of finance, bad information is not a good thing. It's a really risky endeavor. And so it, needless to say, lit a spark under the CFO to say, why wouldn't it be right? And then the CIO, who I'm coached, explains why they need funding for a data warehouse. Now, for 5 years, this gentleman had been asking the same question for funding for the data warehouse. And he wanted to do what's right, but it was never heard. And the reason why it wasn't heard is because they speak a different language. So today we're going to talk about some skills and understanding why IT and the business oftentimes speak different languages and how you can get around that. So the foundation of every relationship is trust, respect, and we need forgiveness, because every now and then we all screw up a little bit. And being able to forgive lets the relationship get past that. And in order to build that trust and respect in a relationship between IT and finance, or finance and IT, or other areas of business, is the first thing you got to understand is why in many organizations does finance not trust IT? And that's what it comes down to, guys, is that many organizations, finance just doesn't trust IT. And the real reason behind this is because if the numbers are wrong, if the data they receive is half complete, and they're trying to take numbers to the street or to the owners of the company if they're privately held, and they are incorrect, they fear being fired. Yep, that's how bad it can get. If you incorrectly report those numbers enough, you will be fired, and worse yet, you can have charges against you if you're a CFO and the numbers are wrong and you knew about it. So that's how important it is. So what we see is that finance departments often do data dumps, and they massage the data themselves, and then they put it in Excel and they do their magic. IT hates this, guys. Those of you in finance, they hate that you guys go rogue and that you guys are off running, grabbing data dumps. And IT does all this work to provide good data, and without your help, it's not going to be right. So understand that's why the trust breaks down between the two groups. The other thing is that finance typically is not given the correct tools. So a lot of times we'll find that IT departments will make decisions on certain software, on certain tools, and then give it to finance. They assume they know what finance needs. And unfortunately, if the tools don't give finance the flexibility that they need, they will dump it to Excel and do it on their own, again going rogue. Or worse yet, they may go out, buy another software package that they think is more departmental friendly, that doesn't need to rely on IT, and they'll just go off and do their own thing. And here's what happens. If something goes wrong in that anything about the software. So make sure that you consider that, that when you go off to your own, you need to engage IT. So now let's talk about why IT resents finance. Because IT gets a little upset because, again, finance is off doing their own thing. They're dumping it to Excel. They're massaging their data. IT may have rolled out some great Cognos business intelligence tools, and then we find out that finance is still just dumping things in Excel. They put a lot of hard work and energy, and as you can imagine, if you work really hard to develop a solution for someone and they don't use it, you're going to get a little bad taste in your mouth. The other thing, a lot of times IT departments don't feel that the communication from the business is there. So they'll say they're not telling us what they want. And again, it comes down to that we're speaking a different language. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. In order to break down these barriers and to learn to respect and trust each other, and actually forgive each other if we got bad data in the past, is to spend time with them. Literally go have lunch with the people in the others departments. Maybe if you have a company softball league, invite some of them. By spending time, you'll get to know people better, and the communications will flow so much better. So the next part is to understand the other person. So you literally have to put yourself in their mindset. And I love these little jokes here. In the world of finance, okay, what do you call a trial balance that doesn't balance? A late night. So what I'm saying here is that in the finance area is they work their tail ends off. IT may not realize that you know, finance oftentimes at the first week of the month is just hunkering down. You've got to understand their lives. So the end of the month is we're doing closing if you're in the Office of Finance and Accounting. So we're not available. So if the IT person's coming to you and saying, hey, I need your help on this project, and it's the third day of the month, guess what? You're not going to be responsive, are you? So IT needs to understand those timelines. The end of a quarter, right before budget season, board reports, all of those are very important times when they literally are hunkering down. If your organization is in acquisition mode, finance department is working, you know, night and day trying to bring those companies into the fold. Guess what? IT is working night and day too because all the systems need to be brought in. So you understand the world of finance. Now, understanding the world of IT. In IT, they're very wired, actually very similar to finance, but slightly different. So here's a little joke. A programmer's wife tells him, run to the store, pick up a loaf of bread. If they have eggs, get a dozen. The programmer comes back with 12 loaves of bread. When you have spent a lot of time coding, guess what? The system, the computer does exactly what you tell it to. There's no interpretation. The computer does what it says. And what we find is that those of us that grew up in computer science, we sometimes think that way, right? And so we're kind of more of it's an absolute how this works. What you got to understand is both worlds are very similar. So both IT and finance have very, very stressful jobs. Well, we oftentimes work late nights and weekends. We are very analytical people, right? We're pulling all these different systems together to bring it together. We're running numbers. One of the things about finance people that you really need to understand is that they're very creative people. I like to say they're kind of like accountants with a creative brain. In the world of IT, you get some people that are creative and some people that are just more, you know, I guess left brain where they're very process oriented. What you have to understand, though, in the world of IT, we need strict change management rules. Okay, so when we are going to roll out a BI reporting system like Cognos, and if the data is going to change or structures are going to change, there is a very stringent change management process, and it needs to be there. Guess what? Finance people, we don't like strict change management processes because our world is changing rapidly. The CFO comes by our office and says, hey, run these numbers, but move this business unit over here and allocate these costs this way. And it's always changing. There's a lot of what-if modeling. And that's really where a lot of tension can come between finance and IT. Again, you need to understand each other's worlds so you can find common ground and resolution of issues. In order to do that, we need to increase our communication. And the best way is to start with the words that you use. Okay? When you're working on a project, we oftentimes hear people say, well, they did this, or you did that. Get rid of those pronouns. Start to use the term we. We creates a much more team-oriented environment so that we all can work together. We're in this together. And one thing also that I meant to note earlier, when you're rolling out, let's say, a new accounting system, a new general ledger system, and it's a huge success, who typically gets the credit for that? The accounting and finance department, right? They're the ones that did it all, right? If it fails, what happens? It was IT's fault, right? History has made it that way for a long time. And those of us in the areas of the business need to realize that's not true. Okay, we're all in this together. When we talk about data, for example, IT is the keepers. They're the protectors of the data. The business owns the data. If your data doesn't roll up properly, you probably gave IT bad roll-up structures, right? If you don't have hierarchy in your data, guess what? Did you ever tell IT how you want things to roll up? So it's that communication. The next thing that you have to be is an active listener. And I love the clip that we did at break where they're talking about everybody on the cell phones. Put the cell phones away, people. Active listening requires you to give undivided attention. Try this with your spouse or significant other for Valentine's Day. Take them out, leave the cell phone at home. Be 100% focused on what they're saying. Give them active listening. Active listening, if you're like me and have a little bit of ADD going on, a good way to really active listening is to know that you have to tell them or present to them what you just said. So if you're listening to someone and you know that you're going to have to reiterate or speak to them and tell them exactly what they just said, then you're probably going to pay a lot better attention. So as you're working with the different areas of the business, whether it's IT or whether you're working with a finance person, listen to what they have to say and then say, so I think what you just said was blah, 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 right? And regurgitate to them what they told you. A lot of times what you'll find is they'll then go, oh, yeah, did I tell you here in this situation it works a little bit differently. So they're going to give you more information. We teach this in our requirements gathering workshop as well. But what it also does is if your interpretation of what they said was wrong, then they're going to catch you and say, well, no, this is how it works. So it will break down those misconceived notions. What we do a lot of times when we talk to people is we listen. And for those of you that have been in the same position for a long time, and I'm guilty of this periodically, is we already think we know the answer. And what we're doing by just jumping to the conclusions, we stop listening. And not only that, we make it so the person that we're talking to is not feeling very special. So communication is not only paying attention and hearing and speaking, but how you're making them feel, okay? So make sure that you're making them feel special. Sometimes when I talk to people, I'll ask questions that I absolutely do know the answer to kind of break the ice. And here's another thing that a lot of people forget to do is ask them for the solution, okay? If I'm in IT and I'm working with someone in marketing and I'm understanding how they do a certain process, I should ask them, how would you fix this? You do this every day. What would your recommendations do? One, you're going to get some great ideas. Two, it's going to create a team environment. And three, what it's going to do is it's going to make them feel special, like they're part of it, like you actually care. And sometimes you've got to add a little bit of empathy. Now, I love to use the example, and if Ian's online, Ian, I'm calling you out, buddy. So Ian's one of our team members, and he took one of the programs that we work with that teaches you active listening skills, and he went out with a young woman and was active listening so much that he made her cry. They're in a bar having a cocktail, and she started crying because she's like, oh my gosh, no guy has ever listened to me like this. So of course, we laughed our butts off, but it really works. So put the cell phones down. If you pick up the cell phone, you wreck it all. Look, if you have teenage kids, you'll see all the time. You want to bop them one, right? Because you're talking to them and they're sitting there, texting and so forth. And you're like, you're not listening. My guess, they learned that from somewhere, either their friends, right, or you, right? So look at yourself and are you doing it? The next thing on communication that we want to do is we want to put ourselves in their shoes. Okay, and here's the big thing, guys. It is not IT's fault when a system fails. Okay, it is never IT's fault. It's our fault. It's all of us. It's your consultants. It's your business. It's IT. A lot of times it's we didn't set proper expectations. Setting proper expectations, and those of you that have been in our other programs will know, set low expectations so you can under-promise, over-deliver, right? Nobody gets upset if you add more functionality than they thought they were giving. If you set the bar really high and come in low, you're not going to look very good. So always, in your personal lives, in your business lives, always, always under-promise, over-deliver. Set expectations. I was just talking with a client yesterday. They had a preview demo of a model that we're going to deploy. Everyone was super excited. They said it was great. Everyone loves it. They're so excited for it. I said, hey, watch out. This is the time. That's awesome that everyone's excited, but you got to send an email out right after that initial kind of preview demo to everyone saying, here's kind of what we showed you. We're glad everyone's excited, but we want you to make sure that you understand that this is in phase one and clearly articulate what you're delivering, and some of the other stuff and list it out is going to be in later phases, because people see a demo and they hear what they want to hear, and they'll think everything's coming in at once. So make sure right after that you send it out and set expectations. By putting them in their shoes, knowing what you want and what you'll get delivered is going to set you up for success. I said it earlier, IT lives by stricter change management rules. Respect that. If you're in marketing or finance or HR, know that. If you want to break the rules and kind of get a little bit more faster changes and processes, you got to work with them. I also find that IT departments, well, everybody does, right? Likes Rice Krispie treats or anything that makes them feel special. Back in the day when I was at Datum, some of you remember that company, I headed up the pre-sales team. And I would once a month send the tech support people pizzas for lunch. And nobody understood why when my team's computers broke down, they got them fixed within 24 hours. Well, it was because they were our friends. They said, oh, wait. I mean, my team would get their computers fixed before the CEO would. So, start to build those relationships early. Remember that finance must be fast, accurate, and ever-changing. So if you're in IT, respect that and know that when they're pushing for something, they're not just trying to nag you. They're getting the CFO breathing down their throat, or investors, or other people, bankers sometimes. So understand the pressures they're feeling. A really good communication trick is to avoid jargon. Okay, and if you've ever been to an IBM event, they are the kings and queens of three-letter acronyms. So avoid those. Explain what it is. If you're in a meeting with people in the business and you're like, oh, we can just grab that with an ODBC connection, guess what? Not everybody knows what that means. If you hear someone else using jargon, why don't you kind of rephrase what they said, but put it into terms that everybody would understand? Oh, so we're going to use a connection to this data source, and we're going to be able to pull it down kind of a pipe, right? That way, what you're doing is you're subconsciously getting friends in the room. Anytime if you've ever been in a room where they're using jargon and you're stressing out because you're like, I don't know what that means, I'm such an idiot, right? You're not an idiot, you don't know what it means. But if you are the person that helps other people that are feeling stressed out feel more comfortable, guess what? Subconsciously, they're like, gosh, I like that guy. He's smart. And it's not that you're smarter, it's that you reduce their stress when they don't know what somebody's talking about. I want to make sure you guys understand one thing. You can't change other people's behavior. You can encourage them, you can influence them, you can coach them, but you can't change it. There's only one person's behavior you can change, and it's yours. But what you'll find, if you change your behavior, everyone around you will start to behave differently as well. They're going to respond to your change. If you come into a meeting and purposely put your cell phone, make kind of a little bit of a production, put your cell phone away so you're not even looking at it, watch what happens. More than likely, they will put their cell phone away as well, because it's mirroring. We are programmed to mirror other people. So again, you can't change their behavior, but you sure can change your own. So I'm going to give you 7 steps for building lasting relationships. And this, again, hopefully with Valentine's Day coming up, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't gotten your significant other something and they said, oh, we're not going to exchange this gifts this year, by the way, they're lying. Get them at least a card, okay? Well, keep yourself out of the doghouse, but don't overdo it. Okay, so 7 steps to building a lasting relationship. Make it personal, okay? Whoops, sorry about that. It is personal. Build those friendships, build those bonds, get empathy. Find out if someone's kids play soccer on Monday, you see them in the hallway, say, hey, how'd the soccer tournament go this weekend? People like to talk about themselves. So let them, give them the opportunity and be engaged with them. Define the project's purpose. So when you start a new project with a various area, what you want to do is make sure everybody in the group defines that project's purpose together. And as you'll learn in some of my workshops, we not only define the purpose for the project, what it will mean and how it will affect and impact the organization and your clients' lives, but how it will affect you personally when you're hugely successful, and make that a team approach to it. Define the rules of engagement. So if you're going to have weekly meetings, say, hey, we're going to start right on time, don't be late, put cell phones away, I need 55 minutes of your time, and stop right at 55 minutes. Have a scribe that types up the notes and sends them out to everyone, and really stick to that. Don't break those rules. By creating that structure, you'll have much more effective meetings, and everybody respects each other more. Spend quality time together. I mentioned this before. If you guys have a bowling league or a softball team, you know, engage other areas of your business to join in. Or maybe, you know, some of our clients say, hey, we're just going to have happy hour at a certain local establishment. You know, invite different areas. Say, hey, we're just all going to meet for a cocktail or a Coke after work. We'd love for you to come. Spending that quality time together is so important. I just read a book this weekend called Leaders Eat Last. If you guys know, one of my favorite authors is Simon Sinek. It's an amazing author. He wrote Start With Why, about purpose, and he has a new book out, Leaders Eat Last, and in it he talks about back, you know, years ago, that the Democrats and the Republicans used to be able to get more done. And he said one of the reasons is they all actually physically lived in D.C. Their families lived in D.C. So they'd fight all day, but then at night they'd be going to the same cocktail parties, they'd be going to the same soccer tournaments. Nowadays, people live back in their districts, and they fly in, and they don't have that connection there. They don't spend quality time together, and it's making our Congress much more ineffective. So it shows how important that quality time is together. Care about each other's success. Care about their success. Try and always help people. I always say it's like a boomerang, right? So if I help somebody, it may take a while to come back, but it's probably gaining momentum out there. Perfect example, years ago I helped out, when I was at a datum, I helped out a partner of a datum. They were just getting into the software, reselling it, and I spent many nights and weekends helping them on their projects. About 8 years later, after I had started my own organization, that technically competed with them, they came to me and they said, we've been bought out, we need to get out of this area of software. would you like our book of business? And I was absolutely astounded. I said, well, how much do I need to buy it for? And they said, there's no money involved. We just want you to take good care of our clients. So that's a perfect example of, caring about their success, kind of paying it forward and having it come back to me years later. And so always think about others and how you can help them succeed. We talked about active listening, be present, no phones. When you're active listening, you're prompting for additional information and repeating what they said. And number 7, leverage nonverbal communications. This is a huge one that none of us do. So a lot of you work with clients or coworkers that are in remote offices. Do yourself a favor. Go talk to IT. Ask if you can use cameras. I realize there's security issues involved in this. You'll have to get approval on this. But seeing the nonverbal communications is huge. At times we've implemented this quite strongly in our organization when we have new consultants starting and we're trying to train them. When they'll say on a conference call, oh yeah, I'm good, but their face will speak volumes. Their facial expressions will be like, I have no clue what you're talking about. So get those cameras for remote meetings and watch for body language changes. There's a great book, those of you that love to read, I believe it's called What Everybody Is Saying. It's written by a former FBI agent named Joe Navarro, and it talks all about nonverbal communication. So if I were to ask you, what part of the body do you think gives you the most important nonverbal clues? Most of you would probably say what? Eyes, face, right? And that's absolutely wrong. It's actually our lower body and our legs. What people do when they start to get nervous, they subconsciously turn their legs toward the door as if they're going to start running out. Or they'll brush their hands up and down their thighs when they start to get nervous. So that's all in the book by Joe Navarro, highly recommended. Okay, so that pretty much is my presentation. A couple of things I want to really emphasize is people don't remember what you say or what you do, but how you make them feel. To develop these relationships with the other areas of the business, think about how you make them feel. And watch it in the rest of today when you have a meeting. Go in there and just watch the dynamics in the room. Think about the people in the room and think about how each individual personally makes you feel. And it actually changes your body chemistry. We're starting to really get into tweeting. So you could tweet out, people don't remember what you say or what you do, but how you make them feel. Or change starts with me. And that means you guys, by making slight changes in how you behave, will greatly impact all the people you work with, all the people in your lives, your personal lives, and everything. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, our Lodestar Twitter is Lodestar_SOL, the First Part Solutions. Or if you want to follow me personally, I'm at Heatherize. My personal information is there as well. So this time we're going to go back to Mike. Mike, are there any questions at this time?
So I'm filling in for Mike. Right now there isn't any questions. So we can wait just a second and see if any come in.